Hi guys, and welcome to another edition of The Kevin Moore Show. Now on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, Mary Terhune. Now Mary has been in the healing arts for over 40 years, and it was in the early 1980s that Mary had a spontaneous and extraordinary spiritual awakening, which was the beginning of 30 years of mystical experiences. Now, after a near-fatal heart attack in 2006, Mary knew it was time to self-publish her book, Out of the Blue, which documents her spiritual awakening, mystical encounters, and shares truths about consciousness that were revealed to her for all humanity. And Mary Terhune, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. Nice to be here.
It's beautiful to have you on. Now, this is going to be to discuss your book and obviously your work as well. Now, your book is Out of the Blue, and that was published a couple of years ago now, wasn't it?
Yes, it was published November 2015 by Hay House at the request of Wayne Dyer.
Okay. Now, you published before that, so when you obviously met Wayne, that was when, with his help,
Yes.
it got published by Hay House. Now, how did you guys meet?
Well, I had a friend of mine told me to send him my original self-published book, which was 7 years prior to me self-publishing it, or after I self-published it. And amazingly enough, he opened it and read the chapter on self-realization, and he was so touched by that chapter, he actually called me on the phone and asked me to come as a guest author, a surprise guest author, to his Divine Love Seminar in Maui in January of 2014. And he read that entire chapter at that seminar for over 30 minutes. And he said it was the first time he's ever read from an author's book before. And that's how moved he was. And then on the stage, he announced that Hay House would be publishing a revised version, and I would add a whole lot of other things in it as well. So.
Wow. Now, there's an extract of that audio on your website as well. Your website is?
My website is maryterhune.com, Terhune.com, and there's an audio. That audio was captured at that workshop, and it's a good half hour or more audio of Wayne reading that chapter on self-realization.
Well, let's just play a little bit right now. We'll just play a little bit, and we'll let the audience just hear that.
Sure.
I thought about how the culmination of physical desire in orgasm was a fleeting moment of physical satisfaction which faded quickly, leaving one wanting more in an endless cycle of desire and need. Unless one could imagine that there was a way out of this unending desire into a permanent state of bliss, one could not seek to find it. Such was the power of physical desire. In a very real way, I realize we don't have physical pleasures, they have us. We would be enslaved to the satisfaction of our desires until we were freed of the trap of the ego personality. This clearly was how I had lived and how most of humanity lived. The divine experience, on the other hand, left me feeling completely enlivened, continuously full, blissfully complete, and ever new without end. Desire did not exist in the divine inner kingdom, only total fulfillment and unending bliss. I could hardly believe my great good fortune. I had made it out of the endless sea of desire and into the kingdom of divinity. I had crossed over. I felt so free. I had no idea a person could feel so free. It was a whole other world. As I looked across the lawn on this day of self-realization, I noticed the leaves, the buildings, the dirt, indeed the very air sparkled like diamonds. It's exactly what I felt. I could see tiny particles of light in each. It reminded me of the experience I had had in my backyard back in 1984.
Okay, so that was just a clip there of obviously the larger part of the audio's on Mary's website. And what is the kind of, with the self-realization, what's that elevator pitch for it in a sense?
It at that moment, I felt a cloud of divinity come over me and awaken my Kundalini energy yet again, but this time in a more powerful way. And the Kundalini became alive and it rolled up within my being, and with it, it took the story of Mary, this separate individual of myself and all my issues and concerned. And when it reached the third eye with divine permission, it went further into the head region and above, and the entire 1,000-petal lotus opened. And I heard the words, Aham Brahmashmi, I am Brahman, and all this is my creation. And I knew that I was the I am that I am. And everything began to unfold in that moment as I rediscovered my true nature, or the nature and the nature of all humanity as divinity. And I heard the words, here is your divinity, the divinity that awaits all mankind. Your soul wants full expression now. This is the living presence. This is living. This is real.
Wow. And we're doing this a bit backwards because normally I'd ask this question at the end, but what is the most important message of your work right now?
That divinity lives in each person, and it's our birthright to reclaim it. It's ours. And humanity is evolving now and making a leap from egoic structure into our divine structure. We're moving from being in the human kingdom to the divine kingdom while in this physical body, and it's ours to reclaim. It's the divinity that belongs to all mankind, to move us out of egoic suffering into our divine nature of bliss, contentment, wholeness, oneness, love, divine compassion, and then to create and live in this world and be with each other from that state.
And how did that experience change you then? I mean, what effects did that have on you? What did it do to your sort of social life, work life? You know, what happened to Mary?
Well, let me just say that I had that state for 20 minutes. And I was beyond, there was no fear. There was just total love because its nature was love. All desire had left my being. Before that, I had physical desire. I had the desire to be with another person physically. I needed support, emotional support from others. But when I entered this state, all desires fled. And I was in complete wholeness, feeling absolutely whole beyond the touch of desire and or thought. I was just in complete being and in the sort of the sankalpa of as the divine. And I had to go and do what's known as seva at this retreat center, which was washing the dishes. So I went to wash the dishes. At the end of all of that, I realized that my state was slipping. And how did I know? Because fear. The first feeling was fear. As soon as I went into separation, absolute fear. That to me was devastating because I understood that that was the egoic structure that I had to go back into now and deal with these issues that I had thought were then all gone. So I was being asked, no, you have to go back and you have to deal with these life issues, deal with these things that you need to learn here or resolve here within your being. Then, when that's done, you may reclaim this. So I had to go back into my life and knowing the truth that indeed divinity lives in everyone in equal measure, and that it's humanity's, you could say, duty to know itself in its divine nature, because when we do, and this is how important, that means every individual is so important because they carry this within them. Every single individual, and that's why it's important to wake up to that within ourselves. That's our true nature. And then you can create the world, create, construct things in the world that reflect that knowing and that nature. But I had to delve back into the egoic structure, deal with my fears, deal with relationships, and it was sort of like a karmic cleansing that I had to go through all of this. But in doing so, I knew the truth. I would always hang on to that truth. And so it made all the sufferings and all the things I had to deal with in life bearable, because I knew the truth. And I knew I just had to live each day in its fullness, deal with whatever I had to deal with in the knowledge that one day all of that would be resolved. And it gave me great faith, as I have today. And of course, in relating with other people, I could no longer be judgmental, even in little ways, and because I knew the truth. And I had to learn to be responsive to people versus reactive. So, and that took a lot of time to assimilate and to embody it and to anchor it in me. This takes time because you have to deal with life. You have to pay the bills. You have to deal with relationships. You've got to fix your car. You have to find a place to live. You have to, all these things of life that life requires of you. But I was doing it from a different perspective. And that's what made it bearable for me all that time.
And just name it. What perspective was that from now? If you could just name it quickly, what was that?
Divine nature. It's our divine. We are divine in our nature.
Okay. So, is that the same as saying that I am, I'm eternal. I am.
Yes.
My true nature is love. I am.
I am is enough.
I am.
Yes.
I'm a soul having a human experience. Could you go there? A soul is
Yes.
just another word for that energy, that essence that you touched.
Yes. And up until now, we've all lived in this egoic structure of being a separate individual with separate ideas and feelings and opinions, and which we suffer under. And now we're reclaiming ourselves by releasing that as an identity, because you could say the ego is a case of mistaken identity. We are not our minds, our feelings, or our thoughts. We are the space between thoughts. That space between thoughts, that space between breaths, is our eternal nature, and it's filled with omniscience and power and wisdom. So when you pause instead of react, you are delving into your wisdom being.
Okay,
Yeah.
so when someone is horrible to you with words
Yes.
or actions, you
Yes.
would come from that experience in a different place. You're not going to say nothing. You're not going to say, "Oh, that's okay. Speak to me like that or do that to me." But that person that's doing that to you, you would see it still from that different perspective of they are that space. They are that. They've just forgotten that space.
Yes. And then you are appropriate, you're responsive versus reactive in that moment. If you just take a breath and don't give back as bad as you got and worse, which will only entangle you more into this illusion, rather than that, take a pause, take a breath, and just center yourself. And then whatever wisdom you find in that pause, then you can respond in an appropriate way. And it's just that people are unconscious. They don't realize who they are, so they don't know who you are. But when you know who you are, you understand the plight of humanity now. And it's our leap now that humanity is making from mere human consciousness into our divine consciousness. And that is a big leap, leaping out of that egoic, familiar, reactive structure where we just love our opinions and our ideas, which are so teeny tiny, to actually who we truly are. Yeah. This is what I've learned and am learning and continue to practice all the time.
So why did you need the kick up the backside with the near-death experience?
The near-death experience happened So the self-realization experience happened in July of 1988. The near-death experience happened in October of 1988, but it was a very unconventional death experience. I was working at MIT at the time, and by now I was meditating during lunch. And so I went to since it was October, it was cold out, so I went inside the electrical engineering building, which has these gigantic windows that face Massachusetts Avenue. And they had these big benches. So I would sit on the bench, lean against the wall, look out at all of this. There was a revolving door in the middle of this lobby where students would come in and out, walk through the buildings to other buildings. So I had my lunch and I was reading about this realized being who was no longer on the planet. He had passed on. And I was feeling sorry that I would never meet him. You know, feeling kind of bad. Oh, gosh, I'll never meet him. He's over there on the other side. Oh, well, that's how it is. So I closed my eyes to meditate for 20 minutes. And when I closed my eyes, I heard someone say to me, "Are you ready?" And I thought it was just a student kind of messing with me because they saw I was meditating. So I didn't pay any attention. I ignored it, kept my eyes closed. Then I hear it louder. "Are you ready?" And with my eyes closed, I looked in the direction of that voice and I saw that saint heading towards me in his red robes. And when he got in front of me, got close to my solar plexus, he turned into the Milky Way, entered my solar plexus, and this whole cacophony of divine sounds happened inside of me. It was bells and conches and winds. It was so loud, a locomotive engine, and all kinds of things were going on. And as the energy came up, it was taking my energy up with it. And as it reached my eardrums, it was so loud, I wondered if other people were standing around listening to this racket that was going on. And at some point, it reached here, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to leave my body. And sure enough, and that moment, I thought, is this okay that I'm leaving my body? And I heard the voice say, it's fine. So, okay. So I left. And immediately, almost, I was standing in front of two big windows of light, one over the other, and the realized being was standing next to it, but not more in an energetic body, as I was in an energetic body. And these windows of light were so powerful. The light was so amazing, like blazing suns, and it was magnetic, and the love was so deep and powerful, and I knew it as my home. And I went to go towards it, and I heard a little voice say, "Don't you have a daughter?" "Oh, yeah. Oh, but I just couldn't help but want to go towards. So I started going to the light, and I knew if I went there, I wouldn't come back. And then I heard from the monk, it was a monk, who said, "Not yet." He touched my energy, wouldn't let me go further. And he said, "Not yet." And then I knew I had to go back, but I had no idea where. I had to go back to where? I had no experience of being a man or a woman. I was just pure presence, pure light and pure presence in being. I was in my wholeness and fullness. And I looked down and I saw this silver cord floating through the air. It somehow was attached to my spiritual body. And I knew if I followed the silver cord, it would lead me back to where it was I needed to go. So I followed the silver cord. I had to concentrate very, very hard, use all my energy. And right away I was brought into this black void. And then all of a sudden it opened up, and there I was looking at our solar system. So I was traveling through our solar system very, very fast, going past the planets. And I wondered what planet I'm going to. And I realized, it was sort of like a Google Zoom. And I realized I was heading down to North America. Oh, I'm going to planet Earth. Okay. Heading down North America, and then zooming in further. Oh, I'm going to Massachusetts. And another zoom down. Oh, I'm going to MIT. So I'm going to MIT, and all of a sudden, here I am looking down. I'm at the ceiling of the engineering building on Mass Ave with the windows, looking down at a body meditating on the bench in the lobby. And I thought, that's the body I have to go back into. I had absolutely zero attachment to that body. I didn't know if it was a man or a woman or what it was, who it was. But I knew I had to go back into that body. So I went back, and I entered through the top. And as soon as the energy went back into the physical body, the whole body just jumped. It was like boom, like that. I went, oh, and it was like putting your foot into a tight shoe. It was so uncomfortable. And then I realized, oh no, I have to take on this mind, these emotions, these issues, and I don't want to. You know? And as I was having that thought, I still had my eyes closed. The monk appeared again, and he goes, you see, the veil is very thin between here and there, very thin. And with that, he disappears. I still have my eyes closed. I'm wondering if people are standing around me because it was such a racket. And then I opened my eyes and I looked around, there was nobody there. And then I thought, oh my God, you can't die. I had the experience, not just the thought knowledge of it, but the experience. Oh my God, you can't die. Wait a minute, if you can't die, then the opposite can't be true. You can't be born. If you can't die, you can't be born. And I thought, oh my God, the whole thing's an illusion. We're never born, we never die, we are eternal. And that which we are is beyond time and space in wholeness of divinity. So it sort of completed everything for me with that. Death died for me that day, the whole notion of it. So I would never fear something that can't happen. The physical body, you may leave the physical body, but that which is you is in here, but you don't see it. So when you look at somebody, you're seeing their physical body, but that's not them. What's really them is more invisible to your eyes, unless you've had experiences and can know for certain that when you look in someone's eyes, you are looking into the eyes of God. That's what you're looking into, and that light that comes out of those eyes of each individual, whether they know it or not.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for just sharing what you've just done there. And I mean, obviously, the first experience that you had back in '84, this near-death experience was something that obviously was needed just to really drive it home. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, because it was in 1988 actually. It was July of '88 is self-realization. October of '88 was the death experience. But I had my first awakening in 1984 with Jesus, with the Master Jesus. That was my first spiritual awakening experience during a crisis.
Right, yeah. Right. Sorry, yes, because I read the book quickly, and yes, I'm getting that confused.
In '84, I had my experience with the Master Jesus, very spirit, and that's when he opened up my Kundalini energy, and first time I ever experienced that because I was an agnostic. And then in '86, I met a monk who helped me explain things, gave me some initiations. Then in '88, I had the experience of self-realization. Then in that October, I had the experience of death. So my foundation was set for the rest of my life and how I was to unfold this knowledge, this understanding, assimilate it, practice it. It took many, many years for me to understand all of this because I knew nothing. I didn't even know what a spiritual path was. I mean, I knew nothing about anything. Nothing. So I came from zero to, zooming out there and having all these amazing mystical experiences, which would continue to unfold and they happen to this day.
And even when you absolutely, and even when you look back at that memory of 1988 of the near-death experience, it still feels as real as it did then today.
Yes.
I mean, yes, you can still recall that memory, and it's solid.
Absolutely solid. There is no wavering. Once you've crossed these boundaries of normal human existence into your true nature, you're changed forever. You're just changed.
Obviously, there's many different near-death experiences that people have, and do you ever look back on that experience and think, well, I would have liked to have met someone like a family member or someone that was familiar to me, but obviously that wasn't. There was no need for that experience. You had the experience you were meant to have.
Yes, I felt full and complete, because it was the true knowledge of my true nature, or the true knowledge of the true nature of humanity. So wherever any of my relatives may be, or friends may be on the other side, I knew that they were going through something similar in reclaiming their own divinity, and they're extremely happy. And there's no such thing as death. So we just go on and on. So I didn't personalize it, because I had no connection with that body. I'm not, and then I knew I was not a man or a woman, or I was not a role, or any of these things. Those were just temporary roles that we take on, and we live through them until we wake up to our divine nature, and then we become a living divine person in this body on this earth. And there's a Sanskrit word for it. It's called being a jivan mukta. Jivan means body, and mukta is liberation. So liberated, will in the body, liberated from the egoic structure, and that sort of thing.
So, you're less. Well, are you judgmental on people at all? Or are you less judgmental nowadays? When you look at a person and you're like, no matter what age or what they look like or what baggage they come with, they're still having that divine experience. They're still God manifested in this human form.
Yes, that's exactly what I see. That's what I see. That's what I know, regardless of behavior, status, whatever. It doesn't matter. The roles here do not matter. They just don't matter in terms of being relative, one better than the other. That's what I mean. And so for sure I know that. And for me to act any differently would only cause my own suffering.
Yes, absolutely, it would do. I mean, let's go to an extreme. Someone's, gone through a rape, something terrible in their life, child abuse, whatever it may be, horrible stuff, right? And they're watching this, and they haven't gone through any of those experiences that you've gone through. They'll just say, well, that's her experience. I've never had those experiences. Why should I trust her for that? Just because she's had those experiences, it seems so lovely what she's saying, yet I can't apply that in my life. I just can't. To that person that did those atrocities to me.
Yeah, I understand that, of course. I mean, this is why it's so important for each person to wake up, so that we stop abusing each other in the most horrific ways. I remember my teacher saying that hatred does more damage than a neutron bomb. And when my teacher said that, I was so struck by it. That stayed with me all these many, many years. That was like 30 some odd years ago. I'll never forget that statement. Hate does worse damage than a neutron bomb. And I took that within myself and understood how important it was for each person to wake up from this unconscious behavior, and how much destruction, of course, we can do when we're coming from egoic structure, because you're separate and you see people as other. And once you do that, then you give yourself permission to cause all kinds of atrocities. And this is how important it is that each person wake up. So these sufferings are just horrible that we do to each other. And whether it's small ways or large ways, whether it's slamming a door in someone's face or not holding open the door, or being impolite or pushing somebody aside, these have big implications. And this is why, I speak now far more than I have ever spoken before about why it's so important for each person to wake up, so that we are not, so we understand what kind of damage we do when we come from egoic structure.
But that damage is going to continue. I mean, you look at all the centuries of violence and all the centuries of violence just to ourselves as individuals.
Yes.
And, a lot of my friends, I love them to bits, but they're never going to be looking at any of these subjects. Most people do not want to face death. Most people don't want to look at, well, where am I going after this? Is this the end?
At some point in your life, when you've suffered enough, you will look inside because you realize you can't get what you want by looking outside. You can't get it outside, that it's an inside job, and you will stop and then find something that leads you inside to the truth of your true nature, whether it's a teacher, a book, a talk, something where you're questioning and answering, who am I and why am I here?
But that asking could be on the person's last goddamn dying breath, and the family around them will never know they asked, but on that last few breaths they asked.
Well, you can't account for other people, you can only account for yourself. And when I say you can only account for yourself, that's not a small thing. Because Brahman or God or divinity lives in you as you, and for you, one person to awaken is the most magnificent gift that you could ever give this world, ever.
It's strange, isn't it? We come here just to do something as special as that, maybe. But we come here for lots of reasons, but to just awaken that gift that it gives. But we were, was the consciousness awakened before it entered into this space? And if so, does it really matter why it came here to anesthetize itself to the fact of what it is?
I don't know why we had to go through all of this. I don't know. That's a question I don't have the answer to. But I do know that we are awakening, and this is part of the evolution of humanity, is to awaken from the ego, mind, thought structure of separation, to move into now our divine kingdom within our beings, now to create something else. Why it all started, I don't know. Can't answer that question. Don't know. But is it important to know that? Not really. What's important to know is your divine nature right now.
But don't you ever go back into the fear structure of like, well, what if my near-death experience wasn't what it was? What if my self-realization moment wasn't what it was? No.
Once you know. There's no going back. Once you open through that door, there's no going back. It's done. I remember when I first awoke, I went, wow. And then I went, oh my God, I can never blame anyone else for anything anymore. Oh no. I remember that, thinking that. Now I knew the truth. Because once you walk through that door, no, there's no going back. You know it. And it's just a knowing versus a thinking, because it's beyond the mind, and it's beyond the mind. The mind cannot conceive of this,
What about that young child that's molested then? And where does that come into, like, I can never blame anyone except for myself? How can that young child blame itself?
It doesn't blame, you don't blame yourself. That's a very egoic sort of way of thinking about things. Having compassion for yourself, that for whatever reason in this life, everybody has to go through these experiences in their lives. You don't always know why. You may never know why, but it's your response to it that makes the difference. I don't know why I had to lose all of my retirement money. I don't know why I had a child at 19 and I had to give her up and not see her for 30 years. I don't know why I had to go through that experience. I don't know why all of these things happened. You may never know why. And that isn't really needed for this moment right now, where you can reclaim who you truly are and come out of that egoic structure of reaction and keep creating so much suffering for yourself. It's all about yourself, forgiving anything in you that had to happen in this life for you to wake up. I mean, that's how I approached it. I had to, because the first thing that Jesus said to me, you can't blame her. She didn't know. When I was blaming myself, you can't blame her. She didn't know.
So that I'm just going to hypothesize here, and I may be completely wrong, but just go with me for other people that this could help. So that
Yeah.
maybe older guy that gave you that baby at 19, and maybe could have known better, and maybe could have known more about birth control at that time. You don't blame him.
Now, everything happens the way it happens. What's the point of all of that? I mean, that's losing your power over your own being and why you had to come here. The whole thing is about, what Jesus said to me, the true forgiveness is self-forgiveness. That's what he said to me. True forgiveness is self-forgiveness. And that's leads to your inner emancipation out of your own suffering.
What about those who purposely mislead us with lies and everything else? And I mean, again, you could apply that same forgiveness to that.
Well, they're unconscious. People do things because they're unconscious. They're unconscious in the egoic structure, and a lot of people are unconscious in egoic structure. I mean, you witness it every day, but you don't have to be. This is why it's so important. If one person doesn't play that game, that can change a moment, not only for you, but for whoever is there. And you're not being reactive to it. It kind of, it's confusing. And then it doesn't go further. You see what I'm saying? This is why one person is so important. One person. Hold that truth, whatever you do. Hold that light within you. Respond appropriately. You will respond appropriately in the moment then to whatever it is that needs to happen.
Well, you could go through this lifetime not wanting to come from this space, and if you're not ready to come from that space, you're not ready. What are the ramifications of that?
You suffer. You suffer. It's, that's just how it is. And just we have to have, compassion for yourself. This is the human condition until we wake up and decide, wait a minute, I don't want to live this way. There has to be a better way, and there is, thank God.
And even if you were not going out there on the big circuits, spreading the message like you are, if you had just spread that message to one person, your job would have been done, would it not?
First of all, I had to spread it to myself. And then I just share my experience. And then whatever happens, happens. That's it.
Right.
And that's it.
Right. Yeah, you've got it. Yeah, right. It starts with you. It starts with us.
Yes. One person. That's how important one person is.
Right, absolutely. And just going back to you talked about there the space between thoughts is where the consciousness is, in a sense, right?
Yes.
So why is the consciousness in the space between thoughts? And the space between thoughts is when you stop thinking about the past, future, or present.
Yes. It's called the now. The space between thoughts and the space between breaths is called the now. Up until this time, we keep this voice in the head, it keeps thinking thoughts that are basically the same thoughts that go round and round and round and round and round without stopping. And that's called our story, the story of our life, the story of how we think things are, and it just goes round and round. And it usually is not a very pleasant story, And when you interrupt the story, what's left? Silence, and that is presence. And that presence is who we truly are. That's why they say your divine nature is known in silence.
But then I could apply that let me apply that to relationships, right? I'm just going to bring this to me for a second, right? Yeah. I could then say, you know what? I could get with anyone from that perspective. It wouldn't matter who I got with, because, even if I didn't fancy the person, that is a divine, that is me within there. That is. If I wasn't going to judge like that, I would come from a relationship in a very different perspective.
Well, it works best when each person is aware of presence within themselves. Otherwise, it just becomes an egoic struggle of right and wrong. So if you're with someone who is committed to knowing themselves and to coming from presence within them, it's far more pleasant to be with someone when you're also in that state, and you are practicing coming from presence, rather than blaming each other, which is a very egoic thing. So it's a much easier, more loving relationship when you have that kind of relationship, whether it's a personal relationship or friends or family or whoever. And so it's far more pleasant. And then you're really focusing on something, rather than focusing on each other's egos, you're focusing on the divine within yourselves and supporting each other in that quest to maintain and reclaim your divine nature as you go through life, taking out the trash, doing the dishes. It's all your perspective that changes. And it's a far more loving relationship then.
I can't even imagine right now what that's like.
I know, but you can have it with your friends or someone who is, whoever your friend is, and seeing it in a different light. It's not so, so it's, yeah, that's what's possible. And this is why I say how important one person is.
Well, yeah, okay, but why would if I'm coming from that space,
Yes.
why I don't need another to come from that space. They may be totally unaware of the space I'm coming from.
Well, try it and see how that works. See if you like it. You may like it or you may not like it. You may opt for wishing for, I think I'd like to be in a relationship where someone really has had some type of an awakening, and we can support each other on this journey.
And your relationship, if you don't mind me asking, do you have that?
No, not at the moment. It would be lovely, and I'm open to it, but I'm not looking out into the world seeking anything. I'm always looking inward, and if that unfolds, it does. Because your first relationship is with yourself in all of its glory, and it's powerful. And if it happens, it happens. I have wonderful friends, and I enjoy their friendship because they also are on the path of wishing, not wishing, but working, practicing and being in that space of presence. And it's so delightful, when you're together, enjoying that space together, speaking of things that matter to your heart. The divine nature within myself and with everyone, and living from that space.
They say, don't they, sometimes that, in relationships, right, just sticking here for a second, when they are argumentative or when they are combative sometimes, that you are maybe getting a bit more out of that than a space of just sort of, peacefulness and bliss in a sense, where, you do tend to grow when you kind of are with someone that is pushing you to go deeper into some of your issues.
Well, you don't have to be combative to do that. You can do that in yourself without being combative. Because you usually find when you continue on that path, it becomes pretty unpleasant, and you wonder if there's a different way to do this. Only the ego likes to have arguments because it makes itself stronger. So it really loves arguments, anything to keep you separate in yourself, is this separate identity. So it kind of feeds it, you're kind of feeding the animal, Which wolf will you feed?
How often do you find, thank you for that. How often do you find yourself now being able to stay in present moment?
I stay moment to moment, present in the now, and the now, and the now, moment to moment, being present. It's a practice, and it's a far nicer practice than going unconscious into the old thought story that creates all kinds of stories and negative stuff. It's far more pleasant. You could practice that, or you could stop that and practice something else, knowing your own divine nature and living and seeing that everything around you is alive with this. The plants, the trees, the animals, the grass, the earth, everything becomes alive, really alive, and you see it for what it is, which is divinity expressing itself in this outer manifestation. And it's far more pleasant. And then you can interact with people in that way. You can create different structures to support others in that way. Whatever you're, whether you're an engineer or you're a nurse or whoever you are, working at Google, I don't know, anywhere, making mattresses, whatever you're doing it for yourself from this space. And it cannot be described. You have to really go, it cannot be described in words, nor can the mind hold it or nor imagine it. But once you've gone through into that space, you don't want to go back because you know the truth.
Absolutely. And to get to that space between the thoughts, which is to connect to your soul or to connect to
Yes.
God, let's just remember what is one practice to get there.
First, notice that you're thinking thoughts. Notice that there's this voice that's blah, 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 blah. It's got an opinion about everything, and it's remembering something that happened in the past, and I should have said this, and, why did she or he say that? And then, oh, God, I've got to get the car fixed. Oh, that car is such a pain in the neck. Oh, my God, my job. Oh, my family. Oh, my relationships. What am I going to do about paying that bill? And it just goes on and on and on. And realize that that's what you're doing, creating this story about the way things are. And once you start interrupting that story by saying, wait a minute, oh, breath, okay, Mary said take a breath, go into the space between thoughts. Let me just widen that space. I don't have to think thoughts. She said, I don't have to think these thoughts. I wonder what might happen if I go into the space between breaths and hang out there and see what magic will unfold. Maybe something else will be created that supports me more in my life and in my relationships and in my work. Maybe something else will emerge. Let me practice that. That alone. If you can do that, wow. And then see what unfolds from there. If you can do that, you've moved a mountain. And see what happens with that. And then anytime you catch yourself, and so it's a practice. Once you realize you have all this anxiety, then you're realizing, oh, it's because I'm doing this again. And then you stop, breathe. Okay, you're in the car. All right, just breathe, relax. Be in the present now. Everything is fine right now. And then right now, everything is okay. And I'm okay. Right now. That's the now. The now is really your God nature. That is your nature. Every time you delve in between thoughts or breaths, that is your nature you're delving into and reclaiming it for you. Not for anybody else, for you. It's you. It's your gift. You were given it. It's all yours. You can have this. This is your true nature. And this is the importance of each human being.
So I guess when larger events have happened in your life, even recently,
Yes.
you just practice what you're preaching, and it really, really has helped you to live a happier, more fulfilling present moment that you've had more than you've had before.
And in life, we'll always throw challenges at you. I've just gotten over I'm into the 4th month of healing from a quadruple bypass. So I had to practice and surrender to the pain of that kind of surgery, and you learn to surrender even more. So you go even deeper. You go even deeper and deeper and unfold. And then suffering will leave you, and you will come into a different way of being in yourself and practice it in its moment to second to moment to moment. Because I know the true nature, once you can be established here and stay here, that's ever new, the ever new in every moment, and ever new and ever new. And it's filled with such bliss, and it's beyond fear, and it's beyond doubt, and it's beyond desires. And you are so fulfilled that it's beyond imagining. Unless it had happened to me, Kevin, I could never imagine the magnificence that each person holds in them. I could never imagine that. It is magnificent. I'm almost going to make myself cry now because it's so magnificent. And I wrote a short poem that said, "Oh, humanity, if for one brief moment you could experience that greatness within, the earth would become a star, and the warmth of its rays would bring tears to the eyes of God." That God in you.
Well, firstly, let me just say as well, well done on your healing for that operation as well, because I'm sure that was a difficult time that you had to go through.
Yes.
So glad that you're with us, and that you're spreading this work, because I know as well that you do workshops and I think on workshops on death, what you have done previously on workshops on self-realization as well.
Yes.
So that's part of your work. Yeah.
Yes, it is. That is my greater work now.
Greater work now.
I moved from doing body work now I'm, that has to go. That's no more time for that. And now this is the world is calling for this. I feel called to do it, and I was saved, thank God, to continue on and do it even more now that I'm healthier and stronger. So I just enjoy speaking about my experience, and if it supports others, that's wonderful. And if people feel uplifted and understand of the greatness within them, then that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Absolutely. Now, your website is
MaryTerhune.com. Mary, TERHUNE.com. It's on my website. On that website is the actual audio of Wayne Dyer reading the chapter on self-realization from that workshop in Maui in January of 2014. So it's very special that audio was preserved. It's a beautiful read if anybody wants to see that. And plus I have the media tab. You can go and listen to other talks I've given. And you can find out what I'm up to. Right now, I'm just doing radio talk shows right now, is in the midst of moving and getting a place. So I'm not traveling anywhere at the moment, but I hope to be.
Well, Mary, we've been linking your website up on the screen on the lower third throughout this interview, so people watching will have seen it flashing up there. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on today.
Kevin, thank you so much. I really appreciated speaking with you. Thank you for your insightful questions. It's beautiful.